My name is Alina Kapoor. I'm 27, and I knew the dinner was going to be a mistake the moment I agreed to it. The text from my mother had been brief. Come to dinner Friday, 7 p.m. Your sister's boyfriend is in town. No warmth, no check-in. Just another announcement dressed as an invitation. We were meeting at Jalsa, an upscale Indian restaurant in South Mumbai, the kind with dim lights and loud opinions where my parents always requested a corner booth so we could see the room. I hadn't brought anyone to family dinners in over 2 years. This time, I decided to change that. When I told my boyfriend Arav about the plan, he just smiled and said, "Do I wear my name patch or leave it in the truck?" I laughed, but I also hesitated, because I knew what that question really meant. Arav runs a garage in Baikala. He doesn't wear suits. He doesn't quote Elon Musk. He can take apart an engine blindfolded but won't say a word unless it matters. The first time I met him, my car had stalled near Matunga and no one else had stopped. He didn't just fix the ignition coil, he followed up a week later to make sure the car still felt alive. His hands are always a little scratched, his fingernails stained, and he smells like heat and effort. He's also the kindest man I've ever known. But I could already hear what my family would say. They wouldn't see any of that. They'd only see grease under the nails. We arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. I wore a navy blue cotton kurta. Arav wore a crisp white shirt, clean jeans, and shoes he'd spent 30 minutes polishing. His hair was combed, side-parted. He looked like someone who knew he was walking into a lion's den and had decided to show up anyway. Inside, the table was already occupied. My mother, always first to arrive, sat perfectly upright, her dupatta pinned like armor. My father scrolled through WhatsApp silently. My older sister Aisha was mid-laugh, curled next to a man I hadn't met before but immediately identified as the finance type. Clean cut, sharp watch, and the loud sort of confidence that thought it was charm. They all looked up when they saw us. My mother's eyes flicked to Arav's outfit, then to mine. Her smile was brief, thin. "You came," she said. "Of course," I replied. I glanced toward my father. He gave a short nod. No words. Aisha leaned over, her grin wide. "This is Sumit. He just got back from Singapore." We sat, Arav beside me. I could already feel the scrutiny settle on his shoulders like weight. He didn't flinch. "And who's this?" Aisha asked, as if I hadn't told them in the family group chat 2 days ago. "This is Arav." "And what do you do, Arav?" Sumit asked, not missing a beat. "I run a garage," Arav said simply. "Auto repairs, restorations, that sort of thing." There was a pause. Then my mother let out a small, polite laugh, the kind she uses when a waiter recommends the wrong wine. "A mechanic?" she said, as if the word had spice on it. Arav nodded, among other things. I could feel the temperature at the table shift. My father sipped water. Aisha looked vaguely amused. Sumit leaned in. "Well, that's honest work, isn't it?" "It is," Arav replied, not defensive, just certain. My mother set her napkin on her lap with slow precision. "At least he'll fix something in your life?" I didn't react. I just looked at her. She didn't meet my eyes. Dinner came in courses. So did the remarks. "So, Arav, do you own the garage?" Sumit asked, somewhere between the appetizers and mains. "Yes. How many employees?" 5. "Any plans to scale?" "We're doing some custom builds, limited units. Like motorcycles." My sister chimed in, eyes dancing. "Classic cars," Arav replied, "and soon EV conversions." There was silence. Number 1 knew how to respond to that. "Interesting," my mother finally said. "So you work with your hands?" "Every day," Arav said. She smiled like he'd confessed to being a snake charmer. By dessert, the conversation shifted, or tried to. My father asked Aisha about her real estate deals in Dubai. Sumit talked about equity portfolios. My mother bragged about a cousin's son becoming an IAS officer. I sat there, quietly eating the kulfi I didn't want, listening to the layered exclusion. Arav stayed calm the entire time. And then came the line I'd remember later. My mother sipped her coffee, then looked at me. "You used to bring such nice boys home, Alina. What happened?" I wanted to say, they didn't stay when things got hard. I wanted to say, they didn't wait outside a hospital at 2 a.m. when I couldn't breathe. I wanted to say, they didn't ask how I was. Arav always does, but instead, I said nothing, because nothing stings longer than silence. Outside, after we left the table and paid our share because my parents forgot to include us in the bill, Arav looked at me under the orange streetlight. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "I didn't mean to make tonight hard for you." I took his hand. His palm was warm, rough, familiar, real. "You didn't," I said, but they did. And they would again, and next time I wouldn't ask for a seat. We got married on a Tuesday, no ceremony, no rituals, no cousins with loud opinions or aunties whispering about outfits. Just 2 signatures, a registrar with tired eyes, and the quiet click of a pen sealing a decision that had been years in the making. I wore a pale blue kurta and tied my hair back. Arhav wore a white shirt that still smelled faintly of engine oil, no matter how many times we'd washed it. He smiled when I met him on the steps of the building, holding a marigold garland he'd bought from a street vendor because it felt weird showing up to a wedding empty-handed. We didn't take photos, there was no cake. But that afternoon we sat by the sea at Bandstand, sharing vada pav and watching the sky shift into monsoon gray. And I remember thinking I've never felt more sure. Number one in my family knew. Not then. I didn't send a message, didn't update my status. I just stopped checking in. There had been no point in asking for their blessings when they'd already given me their verdict. He's a mechanic. That's not a husband, that's a handyman. You could do better. We raised you for something more. And always, behind the words, the silent question, why would someone like you choose someone like him? But they never saw the nights he stayed beside me when my asthma got worse. They didn't know about the time he picked me up from a panic attack at work without asking questions, just kept a bottle of water in one hand and his palm on my back until I could breathe again. They never saw how he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that wasn't broken. They saw grease. I saw steel. I met Arav 3 years ago. I was driving home from a client meeting when my car stalled on a congested road in Matunga. My hazard lights blinked. People honked. I stood by the side panicking, watching driver after driver swerve around without a glance. And then he pulled up beside me on a bike. Helmet, dark t-shirt, calloused hands. He looked at the engine once and said, "You have 15 minutes? I can fix this." I didn't, but I nodded anyway. 15 minutes turned into 20 and he didn't say much while he worked. Just asked me to hold a flashlight and passed a tool from his kit like he was working on something delicate, like the car mattered, like I mattered. When it started again, I exhaled like I'd been underwater. He didn't ask for money, just handed me a card with the name Forge Line Motors scribbled on the back. In case it stalls again, it did. 3 weeks later, and I called. The second time I saw him, I sat in a plastic chair in his workshop while he cleaned carburetors and tuned bikes like he was sculpting. There was music playing old Kishore Kumar from an ancient radio and a boy no older than 15 sweeping the floor, watching Arav like he was watching magic. "He's new," Arav said when I asked. "His dad's in prison. I just let him hang out, keeps him from other trouble." He didn't say it like he was a savior, just a mechanic doing what he could. I brought coffee the next time, and again, the week after. Arav wasn't like the men I'd dated before. He didn't talk in presentations. He didn't ask what my 5-year plan was. He didn't check his phone between questions or offer unsolicited advice about my freelance marketing work. When I told him I was tired, he just said, "What do you need right now?" That question broke me, because no one had ever asked it. I moved into his place after 6 months, a 1-bedroom flat above his garage. Peeling paint, weak water pressure, one fan that clicked every time it turned, but it smelled like eucalyptus and engine grease and morning chai. It felt like effort, like something someone built with their own hands. He'd installed a shelf for my books without asking, made space in his cupboard, bought a second pillow. "I don't snore," I said that first night. "Then we're a match," he replied, already half asleep. We weren't rich, not even close. Some nights we had Maggie for dinner. Some months, rent came late because a client hadn't paid on time or a supplier ghosted. I picked up odd freelance gigs. Arav worked 12-hour days. We pooled whatever came in. But it never felt unstable, because he never made me feel like I had to carry it alone. He'd clean his hands, take off his boots, and sit beside me while I edited social copy for a brand that didn't pay enough. He didn't say much, just stayed close. That was enough. A year into living together, he came home late. I was curled up on the floor with bills spread like a deck of bad cards. I looked up, already bracing for the talk we'd been avoiding. He sat beside me, silent for a while. Then he pulled a box from his pocket. No ribbon, no speech, just a ring. Simple, silver. "I don't want a big wedding," he said. "I know," I said, "but I want to be yours, fully. And I want you to know you're mine, not legally, just properly." I didn't cry. I just nodded, because I'd already decided. The morning we registered the marriage, we took the train instead of a cab. He brought a thermos of tea. We shared a single headphone and listened to old Hindi love songs like teenagers. After the paperwork, he asked if I wanted to call my family. "They should know," he said. "They already made it clear they don't want to," I replied. He didn't argue. He never did. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to find him sketching designs in a grease-stained notebook, logos, frame concepts, electric conversions, torque, specs. He was building something, slowly, patiently, not for applause, not for revenge, just because he believed in it. One night I sat beside him and said, "What are you doing this for?" He shrugged. "I used to think I just wanted to survive. Now I think I want to change what people expect from people like me. That stuck with me. The next morning, I built him a website. It wasn't fancy. Just one page, a photo, a mission statement, a booking link. He read it and said nothing for 5 minutes. Then, "You make it look like a real business." "It is a real business," I said. We didn't tell anyone we were married until 6 weeks later, when my cousin messaged me about a family function and I replied, "Can't come, anniversary dinner." She called immediately. "You got married?" "Yes." "To that mechanic?" "To Rav." She didn't say congratulations, she just said, "Wow." Like I dropped out of medical school to become a clown. By the weekend, the news had spread. My mother called. Once, I didn't pick up. She didn't try again. Instead, she sent a message. "I hope you know what you're doing. Don't come crying when it all falls apart." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone down and went back to editing Arav's blog post on electric engine conversions, because I did know what I was doing. And the only thing falling apart was the image they'd built of who I was supposed to be. I didn't expect flowers, or a card, or even a congratulations, but I thought just one person would reach out after the news of our marriage spread. A cousin, a friend of my mother's, anyone. No one did. Instead, my WhatsApp went quiet. Messages that used to come in, "Send your updated CV for that client," or "We're doing dinner for Mamu's birthday," stopped. The group chat where my family coordinated logistics, holidays, and gossip sat untouched, like a house abandoned in the middle of dinner. The silence said everything. It was a week later when Aisha's message arrived. "Mom says not to come to the engagement party." I stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. "Because I got married?" The dots blinked, paused, blinked again. She said it's not a good look. Not a good look. Like I dyed my hair neon green, or worn sneakers to a funeral. The engagement party was being held at the Taj Land's End, intimate, according to my mother's standards, which meant 120 people and a floral budget equivalent to a car down payment. I hadn't expected an invite, but the fact that they officially rescinded one stung more than I cared to admit. I replied only once, "Got it, thanks." Aisha didn't answer. A few days later, my uncle removed me from the family real estate WhatsApp group. No message, just gone. It wasn't personal, I told myself. They were just realigning their assets, making sure everything went to the right heirs. My father didn't call, but he did send a message through my cousin Niraj. At 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, Niraj messaged, "Uncle says if you need financial help now, he can't assist. You've made your choice." My choice. Like I had married a mistake. The hardest part wasn't the formal cuts, it was the passive ones. Aunties who unfollowed me on Instagram, cousins who stopped tagging me in posts. A childhood friend who used to send me memes every morning didn't even acknowledge my wedding photo when it eventually surfaced, posted not by me, but by one of Arav's employees who'd attended the registry office with us. I watched the silence gather like dust. I didn't say anything. Neither did Arav. Then came the phone call from my mother. I was folding laundry when the screen lit up. For a second, I thought maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she wanted to understand. I answered, "Hello? Don't bring him to Dia's birthday." No hello, no pleasantries. "Okay," I said. "It's not that I don't support your decisions," she added, tone clipped, "but people talk, and your cousin is marrying into a good family." "What's a good family?" I asked quietly. "One with standards." I said nothing. "You don't understand, Alina. These things matter." "To who?" "To everyone except you, apparently." She hung up. A few days later, my father sent me a message, a single sentence. "We won't be able to help you financially anymore." I read it 3 times, as if there was some hidden meaning in the phrasing. There wasn't. I typed, "Noted," then deleted it. I didn't reply at all. They assumed I needed them. They assumed I married down. They assumed I would come crawling back when reality hit the rent, the bills, the lack of a family name to open doors. What they didn't realize was I'd already survived the fall. What came after wasn't rock bottom. It was rebuilding. One morning, Aisha sent a voice note. Her voice was softer than usual, almost performative. "I just wanted to say, I hope you're okay. I don't agree with how you handled everything, but you're still my sister." That phrase, "still my sister," as if she were offering me grace, as if her love had conditions and she'd decided to renew them temporarily. I didn't respond, but I remembered the dinner where she laughed after my mother said, "At least he'll fix something in your life." I remembered her grin, her sip of wine, the way she didn't look at me when I picked up the check for our portion. The hardest part was explaining it to Arav. I didn't have to. He could tell. The way I stared at my phone longer than usual. The way my face tightened after every silence. The way I hesitated when someone asked about home. He didn't say anything for days, until one night when we were brushing our teeth side by side and he quietly said, "I can leave if this is making your life harder." I turned to him, toothbrush in hand. "What?" "I never wanted to be the reason your family turned away from you." "They didn't turn away because of you," I said, rinsing. "They turned away because they never knew how to hold me when I didn't fit their picture." He didn't ask again. We got a letter from my aunt in the mail, a wedding invitation, addressed to me, alone. Inside was a note, handwritten. "We'd love to have you attend. Please, RSVP solo." Solo, not +1, not you and your husband, just me. As if he didn't exist. As if I hadn't changed my entire name and life and identity and legal paperwork. I folded the letter and threw it in the dustbin. Weeks later, I ran into my father in Colaba. He was exiting a meeting at the yacht club. I was passing by, heading to a cafe where I sometimes worked freelance gigs. He saw me first. We stopped. Half a block between us. People passed, honking, walking, rushing to errands. Then he gave me a polite nod. Nothing more, like I was a neighbor or a stranger, not his daughter. I didn't nod back. That night, I told Arav what had happened. He was fixing a headlight, grease on his knuckles, sweat at his temples. He paused, looked at me. "Did it hurt?" "Not as much as it used to." He nodded, then went back to work. A week after that, we were sitting at a roadside dhaba, sharing butter roti and dal, when Arav got a call. I watched his face change, still, calm, but alert. He stepped away to answer, came back 10 minutes later. "What is it?" I asked. He wiped his hands. "Nothing." "A good nothing or a bad nothing?" "Someone saw the site, liked the builds, wants to talk." "Talk about what?" "Investment." I blinked. "Wait, seriously?" He nodded, looked down at his food. Said something about tech-adjacent mobility ventures. I didn't understand half of it. I smiled. "I do." We didn't know it yet, but that was the start. The first spark. The thing that would change the trajectory of both our lives. The thing that would lead to a boardroom, a contract, a company, and a moment 6 months later where my mother would get a call she never expected. But for now, I sat across from my husband. The man they said wasn't husband material. The man they laughed at. And I watched him break off a piece of roti, dip it in dal, and offer it to me first without thinking. And I thought, they lost something, and they don't even know it yet, as some people build empires out of capital. We built ours out of grease, grit, and faith. Not blind faith, not the kind that waits for miracles. The kind that shows up at 6 a.m. to lift the shutter of a small Bicula garage while the rest of the city is still asleep. In the early days, we didn't call it a business, we called it surviving. Rent for the workshop space was 22,000 rupees a month. Our flat above the shop cost another 15,000 rupees. Between tool upgrades, spare parts, taxes, and groceries, we were left with little more than chai money. But we had enough. Enough to get by. Enough to stay warm. Enough to wake up without dread. Some days we had 3 bikes, some days we had none. I'd sit on a plastic chair near the entrance with my laptop on my knees, drafting social media calendars for clients who paid late, if at all. Arav would be under a car, music playing low from a speaker someone had gifted him years ago. The garage smelled like hot rubber, sweat, and ambition. I never got tired of it. He started hiring when we didn't have the budget to. "You can't afford to pay them," I said one evening, counting receipts. "I can't afford to not pay them," he replied. "I can't scale alone." So he brought in 2 young boys from the neighborhood. Both had been cycling past the garage for weeks, slowing just enough to watch him work. One day, he waved them in. "Ever used a wrench?" They didn't know how to reply, but they stayed. Within weeks, they were cleaning, fetching, watching. Within months, they were fixing. He taught them everything. Patiently. Quietly. "Why them?" I asked once. He shrugged. "No one told them they were good at anything. So I'm telling them." We named the garage Forge Line Motors. The name was my idea. He wanted something simple like Arav Auto, but I pushed. "You're not fixing cars," I told him. "You're building futures." He laughed. Sounds like a politician's speech. But he let me name it anyway. I built the website in a weekend, 1 page, a mission statement, a few photos of custom builds and restoration projects. No gimmicks, no buzzwords, just the truth. Honest mechanics, premium workmanship, Mumbai rooted. I posted it, forgot about it. A week later, someone from Powai called. "Saw your site. Do you work on vintage Jaguars?" The Jaguar job turned into 3, then 5. Then a classic Mustang rolled in one morning, shipped from Goa. The owner said, "A friend told me your man works magic." Arav didn't react. He just ran a palm across the hood and said, "We'll take care of her." I saw the client's face. He didn't expect him to say that. That was the thing. No matter how high the clientele climbed, Arav stayed the same. Same hands, same tools, same way of listening to an engine like it was speaking. I started documenting the builds. Just short reels before and after shots, time lapses of polish and welds, captions with words like integrity and craftsmanship. I didn't add filters, I didn't fake the lighting. The work spoke for itself. Within 3 months, the Instagram page crossed 10K, then 30K, then 75K. Autoblogs picked it up. A local startup aggregator listed us under garagepreneurs to watch. We got calls from people we'd never met, people with capital. One afternoon, a man named Naveen Singh walked in. No fanfare, no entourage, just khakis, loafers, and a sharp eye. He watched Arav work for 2 hours without interrupting, didn't even introduce himself, just stood there, arms crossed, as Arav rebuilt a carburetor like he was sketching muscle memory. Then he said, "You ever think about franchising?" Arav didn't stop what he was doing. "Not yet," he said. Naveen smiled. "You will?" He left a card. I researched him that night. Venture capitalist. Specialized in sustainable mobility and EV ecosystems. One of his early investments had gone public. "He wants something," I said. "Everyone does," Arav replied, flipping through his sketchbook, "but I won't trade control for capital." He never chased growth. He chased integrity. He didn't want investors. He wanted believers. We didn't take Naveen's money. Not then. But we did take his advice. We converted the side shed into a design lab, hired a full-time welder, started prototyping our own line of urban electric mopeds, lightweight, efficient, stripped of unnecessary flair. We called them Forge Light. Arav sketched them by hand, then redrew them on my tablet late at night, tracing curves like calligraphy. We worked. We didn't post. We didn't brag. While my family was still pretending I didn't exist, we were building something too solid to be ignored. There was a moment, one night, when I found Arav asleep at his workbench, grease on his cheek, engine blueprint under his hand. I sat beside him and whispered, "What if they never come around?" He didn't open his eyes. He just said, "Then we keep going." And we did. The garage turned into a studio. The studio turned into a movement. We didn't throw a launch party. We didn't send out PR kits. We rolled out the first prototype one morning at 6:30 a.m., right before the streets filled. And we rode, not for press, for proof. 3 hours later, Arav got a call from an editor at Autocar India. "We want to feature you. When are you free for photos?" By the end of the month, we had 4 mopeds pre-ordered. By the end of the quarter, we were in talks with a clean energy accelerator. Arav didn't say much about it, but I saw him polish his nameplate one evening before a client came. Just once. And I knew. Something was changing. We didn't talk about success. We didn't have time to. Between prototype testing, vendor haggling, client repairs, and learning how to file GST correctly, there wasn't room for ego, or excitement, or celebration. We just kept working. The first press feature came quietly. Autocar India, a small column tucked between luxury SUV reviews and fuel economy comparisons. No photo, just a title. The mechanic who's building the future one electric frame at a time. It was enough. By the end of the week, 3 more journalists reached out. By the end of the month, an investor did. His name was Dev Mehra, mid-40s, white kurta, leather sandals, and a voice like an HR memo. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He just shook Arav's hand and said, "I want to talk numbers." We offered him black tea and Marie biscuits. He didn't touch them. Instead, he placed a slim laptop on the table and opened a spreadsheet. "This is what you've done in the last 18 months. We stared at the screen. Graphs, growth curves, engagement analytics. "And this," he said, switching tabs, "is what we could do." He laid out a 3-phase plan. EV line expansion, licensing deals, a fleet program for urban delivery brands. You'd retain 51% equity. We provide operations support and a 4 crore rupee seed. Arav didn't blink. "And who owns the product?" "You do. We just scale it." We didn't say yes. Not immediately. That night, we sat on the roof of the garage, legs swinging off the edge, watching pigeons dart under wires. Arav was quiet. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking I used to measure success in hours," he said. "How long I could stay open, how fast I could fix, how late I could keep the lights on." He turned to me. "Now I have to learn a different clock." We signed the term sheet the next week. I watched Arav do it. Pen steady, posture straight. No announcement, no Instagram post, just a mechanic signing a document that turned him into a founder. The new facility came 2 months later, a small industrial lot in Chembur. Clean walls, empty floors, blank canvas. Arav stood in the middle of it and said, "It smells like promise." We brought in 4 new hires, hired a designer, installed security cameras and a biometric system even though no one asked for one. I saw him checking the feed late at night, not to police, to protect. The first board meeting was scheduled for a Friday, 10 a.m. investor reps, legal advisors, 2 consultants from an accelerator program. Arav ironed his only formal shirt the night before. I tied his tie because he'd never worn one before. "Does it look forced?" he asked. "You don't look like someone trying to impress," I replied. "You look like someone who built the room everyone else is now entering." He didn't say anything, but he didn't take the tie off. The room was colder than expected. Frosted glass, long table, filtered water in glass bottles. Arav didn't sit until everyone else had. They asked about margins, forecasts, user acquisition cost. He answered what he knew, deferred what he didn't, took notes, didn't bluff. At the end, Dev Mehra closed his folder and said, "You're the kind of founder we back." By the third quarter, our urban fleet model was in pilot stage. 10 bikes leased to a last-mile delivery startup. Quiet motors, custom branding, range of 130 kilometers per charge. The press picked it up again. This time, they ran his photo. Grease-stained fingers, folded arms, a man standing next to a vehicle with no ego, just intent. The next call came from a mobility innovation conference. They wanted us to be on a panel. Disruptors of India, founders who started from the ground. I asked Arav if he'd go. He hesitated. "Panels are for people who want to be known." "And what do you want?" "I want the work to speak." I touched his hand. "Then go, and let the work have a mic." At the conference, he sat in a room full of people who wore blazers as brands. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't use slides. He told the story of a garage that opened before sunrise and stayed open long after the city slept. A garage where kids learned discipline through engines, where custom builds were crafted by hand, not outsourced. When he finished, the room clapped, not out of obligation, but because they hadn't expected eloquence from a man who still had oil stains on his cuffs. That night at the hotel, we got a call. My mother? I didn't pick up. I showed Arav the screen. He just said, "Your call." I silenced it. The next day, I listened to her voicemail. Just 4 words. "Call me when free." No context, no emotion, no apology. But I knew. Something had shifted. 2 days later, an old school friend messaged me. "Is your mom joining Raytech Automotive?" Raytech was one of the companies in our new supply chain. Dev had recently brokered a merger. I opened LinkedIn. There it was. Diana Kapoor, Executive Assistant to CEO, Raytech Automotive Group. I laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just once. A soft exhale through the nose, the kind you let out when life writes poetry in lowercase. I didn't call, but I knew the next chapter had already begun, because my mother had just accepted a job, and the man whose hands she once mocked was now on the board of the company that signed her paycheck, and I was sitting in the room next to him. It happened on a Tuesday. I was reviewing vendor contracts at the new Forge Line office, a minimalist glass and concrete space in Lower Peril, with more light than furniture, when Arav's phone buzzed once. He looked at the screen and blinked, the way you do when you're unsure if what you're seeing is real. "Unknown number," he said. He rarely answered calls without a name, but something made him taps. "Accept." I watched his posture shift the moment the voice came through. He didn't speak, just listened. Then, "No, I'm not available today." Pause. "You can email my office. We'll circle back next week." And he hung up. He didn't look at me for a full minute. Then flatly, "Your mother called." I didn't ask how she got the number. There are only so many CEOs at a board-level company, and my mother had always been resourceful when it mattered. 3 hours later, I got the message. "We need to talk, urgently. It's work-related." "Mom." "No." "Hi." "No. Hope you're well." "No. Sorry for everything I said. Just work-related." I didn't respond, not immediately, not out of pettiness, but because I needed a minute to sit with the quiet realization that she had entered the same ecosystem we had built, the one she mocked, dismissed, cut me out for, and now she wanted a meeting. I didn't tell her I already knew she'd joined Raytech, or that the division she was supporting, reported up through a vertical Arav, had quietly acquired a 22% stake in, or that I'd reviewed her name in onboarding documents 2 weeks prior and scrolled past it like it was a footnote. I let her think she was the one unveiling news. Sometimes that's the cruelest kindness. That evening, Arav and I sat on the balcony of our new apartment, 10th floor, view of the eastern sea, quiet enough to hear the waves on clear nights. We were sipping tea when I finally said, "She's going to figure it out." Arav didn't flinch. "She already has." The next day, she called again. I didn't answer. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a message. "My new boss is someone connected to you, isn't he?" Then, "I just need clarity." And finally, "Did you know when I applied?" I typed, "I knew before you accepted." I watched the dots appear, disappear, appear again, then go still. That night, I got a call from Aisha. "What is going on?" "What do you mean?" Mom is panicking. She says you tricked her into taking a job under your husband. I almost laughed. I didn't trick anyone. She applied. She interviewed. She got hired. You should have told us. Why? So you could reject me twice. There was silence. Then, this is going to embarrass her. I let the words sit. Aisha, I said quietly. She called my marriage a mistake, laughed at my husband, disinvited me from yours. And now she wants professional distance? More silence. Then, you've changed. No, I said. You just didn't see me when I was still small enough to ignore. The following week, my mother walked into the quarterly operations review not knowing I would be there. It was a board-level meeting, not for assistance, but Raytech's CEO had requested I attend to discuss ForgeLine's vertical integration. When I entered the room, she was setting a water bottle on the table. Our eyes met. She froze. I didn't. I walked to my seat, second from the head, right across from Arav. He nodded at me once, and we began. She stood the entire meeting, took notes, passed documents, avoided my gaze. It was the longest 2 hours I'd ever seen her still. When the meeting adjourned, she turned sharply and left before I could speak. But that night I got an email. Just one sentence. You could have warned me. I didn't reply, but I opened my laptop, attached our wedding photo taken on a bench by the sea, wind in our hair, nothing but us, and clicked send. No subject line, no message, just the photo. The next morning she responded, I didn't know. Then 10 minutes later, he doesn't look like a CEO. And finally, is that what this is? Revenge? I stared at the screen, typed, number? This is the life I built when you left me out of yours. A week passed, then 2. She didn't call again, but I heard from her manager that she requested a transfer to another division, quietly, internally. As if hiding from a shadow, she cast herself. One day, I saw her in the hallway near the elevator. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and pretended not to. She was carrying a stack of files, her posture slightly hunched, her scarf askew. For a second, I remembered being 10, watching her get ready for work in our old flat, hair neat, lipstick bold, heels sharp. Now, she looked small. I didn't feel satisfaction, just space, a widening gap between who we were and who we had become. That evening, Arav asked, Do you feel better? I didn't answer right away. Then, I feel seen. He nodded. That's enough. And it was. They didn't recognize him at first. It was a gala, annual mobility and clean energy summit, held at the Sofitel, all marble lobbies and glass chandeliers and people who pronounced impact like it cost money to say. I wasn't supposed to go. We never liked events like these. Too performative, too glossy. But this one was different. ForgeLine had just signed a citywide pilot program. The invite came with our names printed on gold-rimmed cards. And this time, Arav said yes. He wore a black Nehru jacket. No tie, no suit. He still looked like himself, just quieter, straight, like someone who had built a life from bolts and bearings and now stood inside a room built for people who used to ignore him. I wore a silk sari, the same one my mother said was too plain for Dia's engagement party. Funny how things circle back. We were seated at table 4, center of the room, close enough to the stage to be seen, not close enough to be questioned. Arav scanned the room like he always did, looking for exits, cues, risks. I touched his wrist. They're just people. He nodded. So am I. 30 minutes in, I saw Aisha. She was standing by the hors d'oeuvre counter, flanked by her fiancé and 2 of his colleagues. Tall, glass in hand, laughing. She hadn't seen me yet, but when the MC took the stage and said, Our keynote tonight comes from a name you'll hear a lot more often this year, ForgeLine's own, Mr. Arav Sinha. Every head turned, including hers. The room didn't clap out of respect. They clapped because they were told to. That's how these things go. But when Arav stood up and walked to the stage, a shift happened. You could feel it. People leaned forward. Phones were lowered. Not because he was famous, but because he didn't act like he needed to be. He didn't use a prompter, didn't quote stats or global indices. He talked about his father's rickshaw, about watching gears spin at 12 years old, about fixing without manuals because some things you just learn by touch. He said, We didn't design for prestige. We designed because the street demands better. And when people say mechanic, they picture oil stains. But I see precision. I see faith. I see fireproof patience. There were no claps during the speech, just breath holding. And when he ended with, We didn't get here by being loud. We got here by lasting. No one could look away. When he stepped down, the applause wasn't polite. It was sustained. The kind of clapping that says we didn't expect that. I stood when he returned to the table. He didn't bow, didn't smile, just sat down and reached for his glass of water like he'd said nothing. But I saw the way people glanced. How heads tilted, how someone at the next table nudged his wife and whispered something before looking our way again. 10 minutes later, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. Aisha, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted. Alina. Her voice was thin, like she was talking around something that lodged in her throat. Hi, I said, calm. She looked at Arav, then back at me. That was incredible. He gave a small nod, said nothing. I didn't realize that your sister married someone worthy of a table? She flushed. I didn't mean to twist the knife, but the silence had weight. You didn't tell us, she whispered. You didn't ask. Her fiancé joined her, shook Arav's hand with a kind of awkward overcorrection. Sir, that was an inspiring talk. I run a fleet logistics firm. We're trying to break into the EV space. Would love to connect. Arav looked at me, then extended his hand. Email my team. We'll see what's possible. We didn't stay for dessert. We slipped out quietly. No red carpet moment, no victory lap. Just a walk to the valet, hand in hand, the same way we always left things. Together. The next morning, I woke up to 6 messages from Aisha. We need to talk. Last night shook me. I feel like I don't even know you anymore. Mom hasn't slept. She saw the video. She wants to meet. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the clip of Arav's speech to my mother. Just that. No caption. That afternoon, I got a voice message. Her voice was soft, shaky. He's everything I said he wasn't, and more. A pause. I'm sorry. Longer pause. Please come to dinner, both of you. I played it twice, then deleted it. That evening, Arav and I sat in the workshop. He was sketching a new frame concept. I was logging back-end orders. He looked up. Everything okay? They want dinner. He kept sketching. Do you want to go? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. We didn't go the first time. Aisha messaged again the next week. She's cooking herself. As if that would tilt the scale. It didn't, but it chipped at something. The second invitation came with a caveat. No guests, just family. I showed Arav the message. He smiled. Well, didn't know I was still a guest. We agreed to go. Not for reconciliation, for punctuation. It was a Sunday evening. Their apartment hadn't changed. The same polished floors, beige drapes, and glass bowls filled with artificial lemons. I could still smell her perfume before she opened the door. She greeted us like we were clients. Polite smile, folded hands. I didn't lean in for a hug. Neither did she. Arav took off his shoes at the door. I watched her eyes flicker to his socks plain, slightly faded. Still judging, still scanning, but she said nothing. Aisha was already seated, her fiancé beside her, acting like this wasn't his first uncomfortable family dinner. It probably wasn't. We took our seats. No wine, no toasts. Just plates, silence, and the sound of cutlery waiting to be useful. My mother served butter chicken and jeera rice. Arav, you prefer mild spice, right? He nodded once. Thank you. It was the most civil exchange they'd had since the day she called him not husband material. Dinner was quiet. Small talk tried to start and failed. No one mentioned business, no one said forge line, no one asked about the speech or the article or the pilot program that made national news 2 days ago. But it hung in the air, thick, tasting like all the things they never imagined. Halfway through the meal, my mother finally spoke. I was wrong. The room paused. Even the spoon stopped clinking. She didn't look at me. She looked at her plate. I thought I was protecting you from a difficult life. I didn't respond. She continued. I said things I regret. Not because they were harsh, but because they were small-minded. Still no eye contact, just confession without consequence. Arav took a sip of water, said nothing. I finally spoke. Do you regret it because of where we are now? Or because of who we were then? She looked up. For the first time, really looked. Her voice faltered. Both. Aisha jumped in. Come on, let's not make this a court hearing. I turned to her. It already was. I just never got to speak. She lowered her eyes. My mother reached for something, words, apology, permission. I just want you in my life again, both of you. I looked at Arav. His face was calm, neutral, like someone who'd seen storms before and didn't fear rain anymore. I said, we're not here to resume something. She blinked. Then why are you here? To close it. Silence, heavy, honest. I stood. You didn't lose me when I married Arav. You lost me when you mocked me for loving someone who saw me clearer than you ever did. I turned to Aisha. You didn't stand up. Not once. That's why I stopped explaining. I looked at my mother again. Forgiveness doesn't come with a dinner. It comes with time and change. She reached forward but stopped. Halfway. A gesture unfinished. Like everything between us. Arav stood with me, pushed in his chair. Thank you for dinner, he said quietly. It was polite, measured, unmistakably final. We walked to the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Outside, the air felt clearer, as if leaving the apartment wasn't just an exit, it was an exhale. Arav took my hand, didn't ask how I felt. He didn't have to. We drove home in silence, not awkward, just done, like a story that had reached its last page. At home, I changed into pajamas and joined Arav on the couch. He was sketching again, a new frame. Lighter, sleeker, future-facing. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm finally starting to be." Later that night, I received a text from my mother. "I understand. I'll wait. No more invitations." It was the most respectful thing she'd said in years. I didn't reply, but I smiled, because I knew she meant it, and I also knew some bridges don't need to burn. They just need to be left behind. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.